while the defendants, many convicted criminals, will have their charges formally forgiven, the memories of those who were assaulted that day cannot be erased. That includes Winston Pinjon. He defended the Capitol that day as a member of the Capitol Police Force. Winston, I appreciate your time to give us your take on the heels of those sweeping pardons. But first, set the scene for us, if you can. Tell us what you saw, what you heard, and what you felt on January the 6th when you were in riot gear.
Yes, thanks, Ben, for having me. So, I showed up to work that day with my riot squad, and before we knew it, we were hearing calls for help on the radio from other officers who had started to be attacked and lines breached. By the time I got to my gear on and to the lower west terrace of the west front of the Capitol, the crowd was already very large and unruly and just growing by the second. There, I heard people telling me that President Trump sent them. They didn't want to hurt us, but they would, that they were going to get into this building. And before I knew it, I was being assaulted by them. It went from pushing to me being punched in the face, knocked on my back, my baton stolen from me, ripped from my hands, and me on my back thinking I just need to protect my gun because I could lose my life here right on the steps of the U.S. Capitol.
4 years after that day, you get word that these sweeping pardons are being given to people who had breached the Capitol that day. When you got that message, what went through your mind?
Well, it was such a complete slap in the face to those of us who protected the Capitol that day, and particularly those who have continued to do it. I left Capitol Police 10 months later, but for those officers who showed up, protected the president now at his inauguration this time, and continue to protect members of Congress, it is just really despicable and so sad because it has just given permission and basically allowed political violence to be okay in this country when it is so far from okay. Law enforcement across the United States, I like to think most American people and the world can agree what happened on January 6th was wrong, and violence against police officers is always wrong.
I'm sure that you saw the reporting leading up to Inauguration Day that President Trump had wanted to issue some pardons for January 6th defendants. He calls them hostages. And before Inauguration Day on the 20th, even Vice President-elect at the time, J.D. Vance, said that those who committed violence, quote, obviously should not be pardoned. Did you ever anticipate that people charged with assaulting officers or even seditious conspiracy would be pardoned?
I knew that it was always a possibility, of course, because Trump had said that he would. But I always hoped that he would do the right thing and that he could try and turn the page, turn a new chapter. But clearly, that's not the case, and we're looking backwards at really this sort of vengeful, vindictive side when so many more important things could be done to actually help American people than allowing these violent convicted felons, these criminals, back into our neighborhoods, back on our streets.
So the supporters of these pardons have said, well, these defendants have served their time. Some have even said that they believe that Trump had emboldened their decision to go to the Capitol. What say you to the people that support these pardons?
I don't really know what to even say to them because if you have an ounce of common sense, you'll know that it's wrong that these pardons happened. It's wrong that violence happened that day. The criminals who were convicted of their actions that day are not hostages. They're not victims of anything but their own actions. And I've said it before, everybody makes mistakes. We're all human, but some make worse mistakes than others, and we all need to be held accountable for our actions. We are a country of law and order, or at least we used to be. And, to have this pardon, it just says there's no accountability and there's no justice.
You saying that this used to be a country of law and order is not something that many people would predict to come from a law enforcement officer or even a former law enforcement officer. Do you think you would ever have said that while you were in training to have that role?
Well, a lot changed since when I joined the department in 2016. That was the tail end of the Obama administration, start of Trump's first term. I mean, look, when I joined the Capitol Police, I was very optimistic. I was excited to serve. It had, fulfill a lifelong dream of becoming a police officer. And even when I left, despite everything that happened, it was my honor to serve, my privilege to protect our democracy. And even, then and now, I still can try to be optimistic, um, and have faith in our Constitution and our elected leaders. But this is obviously, to say the least, a very disappointing and rocky start to this next administration.
I want to ask about how you coped with January 6th. You talked a lot about how art helped you through the aftermath there. Tell me more about that, about your watercolors.
Yeah, so, besides my law enforcement passion and career, I've also been an artist most of my life. And my art took on a new meaning to me after the events of January 6th as a way to sort of cope through some of the trauma that I had endured that day. And that day and my entire Capitol Police career, I was inspired by the building, this beautiful symbol, our sort of sacred temple of democracy. And so for me, being able to kind of express what I went through that day, putting it onto paper through my paints, through pens, was very helpful and continues to be, even now, years later, a source of inspiration and a way to, again, like I said, cope through that and express myself in ways that I can't kind of otherwise verbalize.
Before we let you go, if you had a chance to talk to President Trump, what would you tell him?
I I wish that he could that I wish he would just watch some of the body cam footage from DC officers, watch some of the actual footage. I mean, he might have done that already and just not cared, but I would urge him to honor his oath of office just like I did that day and my entire career, and ask him and plead to him, really, that the American people must come first. Our Constitution must come first. This is not about him. This is about all of us and what is right for America.
Winston Pigeon, former U.S. Capitol Police officer who defended Congress on January the 6th, 2021. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate your service. Thanks.
Thank you.